Thank you for having me.
So we've covered the seat, the water, and the words.
Now where's the heart? We got to...
Oh, thank you. Hare Krishna. So can you please give it to our guest?
Oh. Yeah, sure.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Narayanam Namaskritya.
Narayanam Namaskritya.
Naram Chaiva Narottamam.
Naram Chaiva Narottamam.
Deving Sarasating Vyasam
Deving Saraswati Vyasam
Tato Jayamudiriye. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, we should first offer our respectful obeisances to the Supreme Personality of God, Lord Narayan, to Narayan Rishi, the Supremacy Being, Mother Saraswati, the Goddess of Learning, to Srila Vyasadeva, the author, and to Srila Prabhupada, our spiritual master and founder Acharya. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namani Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nivasesha Sunyavadi Pasavata Desadhane Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So we're now continuing this pastime with Parikshit Maharaj that's setting up the whole Srimad Bhagavatam. How does this thing work? And sorry, new bookmark. Okay, so now we're on. This is the chapter 19, and it's text 2. So what's happened is, Parikshit, he goes to Samika's residence, hermitage, while he's on tour of his empire, and he's very, very thirsty, and Samika's in trance, and he's not responding to the emperor, and he's sort of ignoring him. And Maharaj Parikshit doesn't recognize that he's in trance, and it was sort of circumstantial. It wasn't, like one might say, well, he was cursed. I mean, no. When he was in the womb, a son of a Brahmin tried to kill him with a Brahmastra weapon, a nuclear weapon. So it's not like he had, and then Krishna, of course, comes and protected him. But it's not like he had a lifelong grudge against Brahmanas, and he carried a bag of dead snakes around, just looking for a chance to garland them with a dead snake. He didn't have that kind of mentality. This was a very pure soul. And anyway, we'll discuss more about that. But to catch up, so now Samika's just found out what his son has done for such an insignificant thing. He's cursed him to die in 7 days. Now, Parikshit doesn't know this yet, so I'm just trying to catch up. We could talk some more later. I'm just trying to catch everybody up where we are. And now Parikshit Maharaj is starting to ruminate on what he's just transpired and what he's just done. It's text number 2, and we'll try to follow my Sanskrit. Okay. Dhruvam tato me krita deva helana. Dhruvam tato me krita deva helana. Duratyayam vyasanam nati Dirgat Duratyayam Vyasanam Nati Dirgat Tat Ashtu Kamam Hi Agha Niskritaya Me Tat Ashtra Kamam Hi Agha Niskritaya Me Yata Na Puryam Purna Evam Yata Na Puryam Purna Evam Hada Dhruvam tato me krita. What?
No, she said she's always stuck behind.
Okay. Okay. Well, join the club. Yeah, I'm trying to catch up for almost 50 years now. Dhruvam tato me krita deva helinad.
Dhruvam tato me krita deva helanam.
Duratyayam vyasanam nati dirgat.
Durattayam vyasanam nati dirghat.
Tad ashtu kamam hi agham. Tad ashtu hamam hi agha nishkritaya me.
Tadastu kamam hi agha nishkritaya me.
Yatana kuryam puna evam adha.
Yatana kuryam punar evam adha.
Dhruvam tato me krita deva helenad.
Dhruvam tato me krita deva helanam.
Duratyayam vyasanam nati durgat.
Durattayam vyasanam nati dirghat.
Tat ashtu kamam hi agam niskritaya me.
Tadastu kamam hi agha nishkritaya me.
Yatana kuryam puna evam hadha.
Yatana kuryam punar evam adha.
Dhruvam tato me krita deva helenat.
Dhruvam tato me krita deva helanam.
Duratyaya vyasanam nati durgat.
Durattayam vyasanam nati dirghat.
Yeah, that's supposed to be dirgat. Sorry. Tad ashtu kamam hi agam niskritaya me.
Tadastu kamam hi agha nishkritaya me.
Yatana kuryam puna evam hadha.
Yatana kuryam punar evam adha.
Someone else?
Dhruvam tato me krita deva helana.
Dhruvam tato me krita deva helanam.
Duratyayam vyasanam nati dirghat.
Durattayam vyasanam nati dirghat.
Tadastu kamam yaganishkritaya me.
Tadastu kamam agha nishkritaya me.
Yatana kuryam punareva madha.
Yatana kuryam punar evam adha. Dhruvam tato me krita deva helanam.
Dhruvam tato me krita deva helanam.
Durattayam vyasanam nati dirghat.
Duratyayam vyasanam nati dirghat.
Tadastu kamam hi agha nishkritaya me.
Tadastu kamam yaganishkritaya me.
Yathana kuryam punar evam adha.
Yatana kuryam punareva madha.
The women?
Dhruvam tato me krita deva helanam.
Dhruvam tato me krita deva helanam.
Duratyam vyasanam nati dirghat.
Durattayam vyasanam nati dirghat.
Tat astu kamam hi agha nishkritaya me.
Tadastu kamam hi agha nishkritaya me.
Yatana kuryam punar evam adha.
Yatana kuryam punar evam adha.
Dhruvam tato me krita deva helanad.
Dhruvam tato me krita deva helanam.
Duratyayam vyasanam nati dirghat.
Durattayam vyasanam nati dirghat.
Tadastu kamam yaga nishkritaya me.
Tadastu kamam yaganishkritaya me.
Yatana kuryam punar eva madha.
Atana kuryam punar evam adha. Dhruvam tato me krita deva helanam. Durattayam vyasanam nati dirghat. Tadastu kamam yaganishkritaya me. Yatana kuryam punar evam adha.
Dhruvam tato me krita deva helanam.
Dhruvam tato me krita deva helanam.
Duratyayam vyasanam Vyasanamnati dirghat
Duratayam Vyasanam Nati Dirghat
Tadastu kamam yaganishkritaya me
Tadastu Kamam Yaganishkritaya me
Yattha nakuryam punareva madha
Yadana Puryam Punariva Madha Dhruvam Tato Me Kritadeva Helana Duratayam Vyasanam Nati Dirghat Tadastu Kamam Yaganishkritaya me Yatana Puryam Punariva
So the word for word is Dhruvam,
Dhruvam,
sure and certain.
sure and certain.
Tata,
Tata,
therefore.
may,
my. Krita Deva, Helanat, because of disobeying the orders of the Lord.
because of disobeying the order of the Lord.
Duratyayam, very difficult.
Very difficult.
Vyasanam, calamity. Not. Ati, greatly. Dear God, far off. Tat, that. Ashtu, let it be. Kamam, desire without reservation. He, certainly. Agha, sins. Niskritaya, for getting free. May, my. Yata, so that. Na, never. Kuryam, shall I do it. Puna, again. Evam, as I have done. Atha, directly. So I'll say, and then you repeat, please. King Parikshit thought. Due to my neglecting the injunctions of the Supreme Lord, I must certainly expect some difficulty to overcome me in the near future. I now desire, without reservation, that the calamity come now. For in this way, I may be freed of the sinful action. And not commit such an offense again. So the translation is, King Parikshit thought, due to my neglecting the injunctions of the Supreme Lord, I must certainly expect some difficulty to overcome me in the near future. I now desire without reservation that the calamity come now. For in this way I may be freed of the sinful action and not commit such an offense again. Purport by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. The Supreme Lord enjoins that brahmanas and cows must be given all protection. The Lord is Himself very much inclined to do good to brahmanas and cows. Go Brahmanya Hidaya Cha. Maharaj Parikshit knew all this. Thus he concluded that his insulting a powerful brahmana was certainly to be punished by the laws of the Lord, and he was expecting something very difficult in the very near future. He therefore desired the imminent calamity to fall on him and not on his family members. A man's personal misconduct affects all his family members. Therefore Maharaj Parikshit desired the calamity to fall on him alone. But by suffering personally, he would be restrained from future sins, and at the same time, the sin which he had committed would be counteracted so that his descendants would not suffer. That is the way a responsible devotee thinks. The family members of a devotee also share the effects of a devotee's service unto the Lord. Maharaj Prahlad saved his demon father by his personal devotional service. A devotee's son in the family is the greatest boon or blessing of the Lord. So once again, the verse is, King Parikshit thought, due to my neglecting the injunctions of the Supreme Lord, I must certainly expect some difficulty to overcome me in the near future. I now desire, without reservation, that the calamity come now, for in this way I may be freed of the sinful action and not commit such an offense again. Om again, So, we've been discussing whether or not this is due to the pride of the Brahmanas, or is it the influence of Kali, or is it that Parikshit is to blame here at fault, or is it the will of the Lord? And here we can see that, first of all, Parikshit Maharaj, he immediately, and this is, Prabhupada says, I think he says it here, I think I just read it. He says that when, a pious person does something wrong, immediately it hits him. And it's like, what did I do? I mean, how did I do that? So he's immediately thinking, I have to take responsibility for my action, and I'll experience the sinful reaction, and I will experience it and not drag it out and cause my family to suffer. And in this way, I'll learn a lesson, and I won't allow this kind of thing to happen again. It was a circumstantial thing, like I said. It's not like he was, still bitter because as a child he was almost killed by the son of a Brahmin while in the womb. He wasn't walking around carrying, a bag of dead snakes, just waiting for a chance to garland a Brahmin. That wasn't his mood. He was, there's so many good qualities. He was actually compared to Lord Ramachandra, the way he ruled the planet. And when he heard that one cow was being beaten by a miscreant, a Sudra, pretending in the dress or the garb of a king, was beating this cow, he immediately arrived on the scene. Because no animal, no project, not human, not animal, or plants, should be mistreated in his kingdom. And up until this point, no one had been mistreated. And he immediately came forth to issue the punishment. Because he caught him red-handed. I mean, that was Kali, that is. And when he asked Dharma the bull, Dharma doesn't really put the blame on Kali. He gives all of these other explanations. Some say it's due to past karma. Some say it's by the will of the Lord. Like we're discussing, is it the Brahmin being prideful? And all of those things have some bearing on this. But ultimately, this is the will of the Lord. But so he still feels that Kali should be executed for beating this the three legs of the cow and trying to destroy the last leg that he's standing on. This is you're killing a cow in my kingdom. This is not. I won't stand for this. And as he's about to do it, what does Kali do? He grovels. He begs, please forgive me. Please, I'm so sorry. I will never do it again, please. And he throws off the garb of the king. Please give me shelter. And so the king has to give him shelter because he's begged. And then he gives him some options. Whereas here, now Kali, Mars Parikshit, all he's done, even the Brahmin, the sage, didn't think it was serious. It was just he just threw it off and what's this? It's like, just a dead flower garland or something. Just not a big deal. And he saw his son crying, and then he found out what his son had done. And the fact that his son had given such a severe punishment for such an insignificant act was so out of balance. At this point, Parikshit doesn't know what the reaction is, but he's willing to accept the reaction because he wants only him to suffer. He doesn't want his family to share in it or the kingdom to share in it. And then he can get about his business. And then also, just in case some circumstance comes along again and he's thirsty and hungry and then he doesn't think and he just does this, he'll remember. He'll have something to remember it by because he got a reaction for it. But this was being done, it was being played out. It's all part of the drama that Krishna's planned, so that it sets up the circumstance for Parikshit to meet Sukadeva Goswami, so that we have the Srimad Bhagavatam. So, and that's hard for us to understand. I mean, but there are other situations, because, and when I read that last sentence, where it was talking about, Prabhupada all of a sudden from out of nowhere starts talking about Prahlad Maharaj. That Prahlad Maharaj, I was only concerned about his demon father. Now again, here's Prahlad Maharaj as a child. What was his sins? Why was he being poisoned? Why was he being thrown off cliffs? Why was he being beaten? Why was he being drowned? Did he commit sin? No. And the Lord was protecting him. He was an innocent child, just like Parikshit Maharaj, an innocent child within the womb. And there's an attempt by an unsuitable person in the Brahmin family with a nuclear weapon. And he's still thinking, I got to save my family from this reaction because I've done something wrong to the Brahmins. And he's still protecting the cows. He's such an ideal king. There's a whole description, I think it's in the 12th chapter, and Yudhisthira is asking, well, is Parikshit ready for this? Can he do this? And he's compared to Lord Ramachandra, he's compared to Prithu Maharaj, he's compared to all these great personalities. So Yudhisthira is feeling very good about all this, that we have a suitable person here to take the reins of government. He has no disqualification. So this act, there's the story of Manduka, I think it's Manduka Rishi, who as a child committed, he was playing with some ants and he killed an ant. And so then he gets a reaction where he's robbed, he's arrested for theft, and actually he wasn't guilty. The stolen property was on his, the stolen goods, someone put it on his property, he wasn't even aware it was there, and he got a very severe reaction. So when he went before Vidura, he says to him, why did you give me such a severe reaction?
Vidura.
I mean Yamaraj. He became Vidura. So, and anyway, yeah. So he comes before Yamaraj, and Yamaraj actually has a desire to take. He wants to not just be dealing down in the lower regions, many, many hundreds of thousands of miles from here, in the Platonic regions. He's meting out all the sinful reactions of the lowest of the low. And so he'd like a little opportunity to go out and go on a preaching excursion. And so this was all, again, set up as a circumstance so that he could go out and preach. So it's not like Yamaraj was doing something so harsh or making such a serious mistake. And so similarly, this thing with Parikshit Maharaj, Krishna is being used by Krishna so that the Bhagavatam can be spoken. If we take away from this, that if you think of all the great things that Parikshit Maharaj does, when all is said and done, and your only takeaway is that, well, that was that one time when he put a snake on Brahma. There was that one time he didn't really act like, royalty, really. If that's your takeaway, then, that's another lesson to be learned, because that's not the takeaway that Prabhupada gives us. Prabhupada says, he compares him to Prahlad Maharaj. That Prahlad Maharaj is only thinking about his sinful father and how to free his sinful father. He's not thinking that my father tortured me for no reason. Let him rot in hell. No, he's thinking just the opposite. Please forgive my father for his actions. And that was the only benediction that he would accept from the Lord. So, someone like Maharaj Pariksit there's a saying that in a forest, if there's a very fragrant flower, if it's just one flower or one tree that's has this very aromatic flower, it permeates the whole forest. So similarly, if there's one very pure and humble devotee leader in society, it affects the entire society. And Pariksit Maharaj, by his leadership, there was no sin being committed. There was no animal killing. There was no illicit sex. There was no want, drought, famine, too much rain, flooding. Everything was properly being managed because he was such a pure soul. His name means the one who was examining. He was constantly examining everyone he met to see if he could find that person that saved him in his heart. So Pariksit Maharaj, he was being dictated to do this, and it's like an incidental, circumstantial mistake. But he didn't start thinking, well, I can get out of this, like becoming his own lawyer. I can turn this around. It's not that serious. And even apparently the sage is not that offended by it. I can counter this, and maybe I could bribe him. Maybe I can give him some money. Especially when you find out that he's about to lose everything. And when what he's losing compared to what we lose, we're just not even peasants. I mean, he has the wealth of the entire planet, and he doesn't care a thing about it. He realizes now, this is my chance to finally get that association with that person who I saw in the womb. That's what he's eager for. He's eager for that. When he finds out that he's about to be cursed, or he has been cursed, and in 7 days he'll be bitten by a snake bird. What do I do on the threshold of death? Well, everyone advises him to go down to the river. I think it's the Ganges or the Saraswati. And he sits down and listens to Sukadev Goswami. And Sukadev Goswami, he's the king of the world. And Sukadev Goswami, this person is not like some big Pandit Brahmin, with all this regal dress or anything. I mean, you couldn't find a more detached, almost like a Jat Bharat character, personality. He had not even a stitch of clothing, but he had all the essence of the Vedic knowledge within him, and it just flowed out of his mouth into the ear hole of Pariksit Maharaj. And then we get to hear it through the sages, Sutta Goswami and Maitreya, and down the line until Srila Prabhupada finally translates it and brings it across the ocean to us. We get to eavesdrop on that. And this is all being set up so that we now here can benefit, to understand we're all on the threshold of death. It's either today, tomorrow, or 20 years from now. And when it comes, everyone's like, oh, did you hear what happened? So-and-so died. Oh. All that stuff that we're worried about. I have a locker that I pay so much money per month. And it's stuff I don't use. But I can't let go of it. I don't know what to do with it. Should I give it away? Should I throw it away? Should I try to sell it?
I don't really know what's in it.
We don't even know what's in it. I know there's a rocking chair in there and some box. But anyway, I look around just the 2 rooms we have, and I look around and I'm thinking, what is this? It means something to me, but what is it going to mean to anybody else? Maybe my son a little bit, but nobody else knows what these things are. It's just, but I'm so attached. But everything I have, even this body, it's finished. I'm gone. The soul, is taken away to destination unknown. That's what we're being prepared for. And Pariksit Maharaj, he embraces it. He's teaching us that this is a good thing. That you know when you're going to die. This is a good thing. This is a good thing okay, I committed this offense, but look at what I'm getting. I'm getting a blessing in disguise. They say it's a curse, but it's a blessing. I will now have the opportunity to prepare, in a sane, sober way, and to hear the pastimes of the Supreme Personality of God, and just absorb myself only in thoughts of Krishna, 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 Krishna. So, it's not, this isn't, but it also shows us that what happens if the Varnas aren't working together nicely. Like if the Brahmins and the Kshatriyas, one feels prouder, one feels more important than the other, it can create chaos in society. And in this case, this boy, the fact that he was 10 years old and he had this power is a little questionable. How did he overhear it, or was he actually taught this power? And he didn't show proper discretion that just because of this garland of a snake, he's going to execute someone. Pariksit didn't even execute Kali. He forgave him. He didn't even give Pariksit a chance. But if the Brahmins and the Kshatriyas are cooperating, everything will go nicely in society. If there's pride comes before the fall. And when we know it's the will of Krishna, then we know that something wonderful is about to happen. When you realize these setbacks that I'm having right now, something very wonderful is happening. Because death comes like a thief in the night, knocking on our door. Comes looking for us. So, this is basically. Here's one other thing I was going to say. So, we just have to keep our eyes and ears open for these opportunities, and not unnecessarily overreact to setbacks, and try to learn how Pariksit Maharaj dealt with what was an apparent setback. He didn't try to talk his way out of it or rationalize it. He accepted it. And was willing to take the reaction for his mistake, even though this was actually created by the will of God, because the will of God is to prepare him and to teach us how to prepare for the time of death. That's the takeaway here. And not like, oh, well, Pariksit, what did he do that for? You have this personality who's done so much good in society, and then he makes one mistake. That's what you think of. Made one mistake, may have done a whole career of devotional service, and he has a moment of, where he gets drifted away and makes a mistake, has a lapse of judgment, and forget about all the books he distributed, forget about this, forget about that. The takeaway is he committed this offense, or he, didn't chant his rounds that day. That's the takeaway. He had a few months where he was not coming to the program. We have to be that if we see this like that Parikshit Maharaj, yes, it appears that he did something egregious, but it was a small, light thing, and it was set up by Krishna to prepare him for the time of death. So, does anyone have anything they'd like to add, or any? Yes?
I just remember that we were at a certain place, and it came to a point where we couldn't go and we couldn't stay.
Yeah.
And it just got worse and worse and worse. And I don't even know how, but somehow we found ourselves here at New Talavana, and my condolences to the residents of New Talavana. We're glad to be here. And another instance where a woman was worried that she wasn't going to get married. And now, if it's Krishna's will, I said, you can sit in a closet and the person will come and open the closet door, and it'll be that, the right thing.
Yeah, there's many examples. Right?
Yeah, but all the while, yes, we do have to think,
and most people, when they have great wealth, then Prabhupada gave an example of one man, and he was begging the doctor, just give me 4 more years so I can finish my program. What program? The program is to prepare to get out of the cycle of birth and death. And when they have, they think they have so much wealth, but in reality, it's all very, very relative. So, but it's harder. The more you have, the harder it is to let go. But even the smallest things, even if you're it's hard to let go of anything. We get attached, but nothing lasts. Everything, that's what we know. We just see our karmas constantly. We're like in this river, and it's constantly, driving us, going down this little, stagnant pool, and then coming back up this way, and then we're flowing nicely, and then there's a waterfall, and we fall down, and then we pick ourselves up, and then there's just one. We never know what's coming down the river. We're just floating along in this life, and it's the point is that if someone comes along, it's like that. I was listening to Radhanath Maharaj the other day talking about. I've heard it before. It's this one pastime that he talks about in his book that. At one point, the Ganges River is extremely powerful, and unless you know what you're doing, if you get in it, you immediately get swept away. And so he got in the river, and he just and then all of a sudden, he just felt this really strong arm from this sadhu that lived, and his name was, Kali. He grabbed his arm and pulled him up out of the river. He was a big man. He looked like he was about 50, 60 years old. And then he said that he had asked some other sadhus how old he thought they were. He said, well, I've known him for 50 years and he's always looked exactly like that. And at one point he had a lot of mystic powers, and years and years passed, and people would follow him. And then when he saw that they were following him, he stopped doing showing any of that, and just went further and further back into the Himalayas. And he taught Maharaj how to live there. He said that if you think yourself superior to any other living entity, be it a wild hog, an elephant, a jaguar, a serpent, monkeys, or another sage, but specifically when it came to the animals, if you feel that you're superior to them, they'll understand that and they will kill you. Mm-hmm. But if you see them equally, it's not like you Pandu, was it?
Vidya Vinay Sampanne.
Yeah.
Brahmane Gavi Hastini. That's
right. You see all living entities, the dog eater, the elephant, all living entities is the same. Samadarshana, Pandit Samadarshana. That you see everyone the same. But it's not like, you know, you go and pay obeisances to a tiger, you know, because the tiger will take your head off. But you understand that that living entity in that body is the same as you know, and I. And so you have that vision. But so he all of a sudden he was just washed away, and then this sadhu just grabbed him and pulls him out. So we're being tossed about in this ocean. And there's that painting, it's in the 12th canto. Were you involved in that painting, or was that? And you see these people in the ocean, and then you see a boat with all the devotees chanting and dancing. And there was one example.
I remember that painting.
Yeah. Huh?
I remember that painting.
It's in the 12th canto, I think.
Okay.
And the symptoms of Kali Yuga, something like that. And so people are in the ocean being tossed about by the waves. And so one devotee was asking Prabhupada, when you take shelter of the spiritual master in this process, you seem to still feel the modes of passion and ignorance and goodness. Are we totally out of them? And then Prabhupada gave the example that it's like being on a boat. As long as you're at the lotus feet of the spiritual master and taking shelter of him, the boat, the society is a boat. And so the boat is in the ocean. And so it feels the effect of the waves. But you're not in the ocean, being tossed about. You have an expert captain controlling the boat and taking you across the ocean to the other side. So that's our situation. We can feel the effects of the material energy, but we have to stay firm and fixed at the lotus feet of Srila Prabhupada and this process of Bhakti Yoga, and not let anything distract us or upset us. It's like, sometimes the worst thing is that you make your own stupid mistake, and you get really hard on yourself. I know, for myself, it's not so much what other people do, it's what I think I've done wrong. And then I get just beat myself up. And at a certain point you have to that's also a kind of false pride or something. You have to, just admit to the mistake, take the lumps, and then move on. Don't get stuck. Keep going. And not be afraid to admit, I made a mistake. To err is human. To forgive is divine. So, something else?
Mother Krishna has something. Prabhu, thank you for your class. Two things that came to my mind.
Thank you.
I'm reading in the 4th canto, and just like Maharaj Krishna is having some regret, he's seeing what he was doing. So it was Dhruva Maharaj. He was realizing what he was asking for was not a good thing, because they were standing the Supreme Personality Godhead for asking for unending devotional service. But as being a child, he was
wanting a kingdom.
The whole thing of the envy and anger and wanting to just get what he wanted, a better kingdom. But then when I was reading later on, then he's regretting all these things that he was wanting to do. It's like a lot of, I see that in the Bhagavatam, like you have not exactly, but Queen Kunti, she's asking for these calamities to happen again and again, so she can become dependent on Krishna. That was one thing. And the other thing that I was thinking was, when you're talking about Srini, he didn't offer his obeisances like the Pali did. He offered his obeisances, and thereby he didn't have to have that. The Maharaj Krishna come down with his sword, whereas Srini, he wasn't able to be like that, offer his respects or anything. He was just like.
Well, he didn't approach Maharaj Pariksit and ask why he did it.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and in a sense, the Kshatriya class is subordinate to the Brahmins. So he didn't even give him a chance to make, But then, that's why my point was, is that You know, most people today would just try to become their own lawyer and try to well, you know, I mean, this and it was that, and I was really thirsty, and, you know, couldn't, you know, a little bit of water. So, yeah, it was wrong, but it wasn't you know, I didn't curse him or anything. I mean, you know, it was just a simple thing. I didn't hurt him physically. Yeah, I made a mistake. It wasn't the right thing to do, you know. And maybe he really was in meditation. But I say that, according to what I've been reading, is that this is what Krishna, this is like a Yoga Maya thing. Krishna put him in that situation so that he would come to this point. I mean, I've said it before that, you know, when I was told that I should be, right now they thought they thought, well, we don't know why you're alive. You could die tonight or tomorrow or another 20 years because we don't understand why you're alive. And I'm thinking, this is great. I got the Parikit Maharaj. This is what I've been working for my whole life. And they said, you got to get the surgery right away. And I'm thinking, I don't know. I know I'm going to die now.
Poor guy. You're gonna, and I'm not gonna die.
We're all, yes, we are.
He had a millstone around his neck, too.
No comment there. Anyway, I hope I didn't have much. I just, anyway, that's my thoughts on the verse in purport. And so, is there any other revelations, realizations? Yes.
I got the chance recently to ask a question about how to become free from attachment, fear, and anger. And on attachment, the answer was that it's natural to be attached. So, as with so many other things, instead of being attached to, because you were talking about attachment, instead of our being attached to things for our own sense gratification, then we use that propensity to be attached in the service of the Lord by being attached to pleasing Guru and Krishna.
Mm-hmm. That's nice. Yeah, we should be attached to our service. We should be attached to the association of devotees. We should be attached to the process. And, you know, a lot of times, you think that, and I remember this when you do door-to-door Sankirtan, you know, back in the 70s, people were saying, yeah, I know, like if you saw an Indian, and they'd say, yeah, I know this, yeah, but I'll do it later. I know all this now I'm making money. But what happens is, like I know that when I've had some illnesses, over the last decade, you know, sometimes it's amazing how Prabhupada was able to be laying there translating. That's just amazing to me. Because I got all these books now, I have all the tapes, everything. This is the perfect chance now to really dive in. It's not so easy to, you know, you have the mental stamina to do it, the physical stamina to do it. You know, you're not feeling, you know. So we can't just think, oh, well, when I get old, but you don't know how old you really are, because Prabhupada always defined old as how close you are to death. And so we don't really know how old we are. So it's best to try to... And then recently I heard about, I think it was Keshava Bharati, because he had this... he'd become attached to reading Prabhupada's books out loud. And he had a very serious, I think it was a heart condition, surgery or something. And while in the hospital, he still maintained that attachment, even though he was in a weakened condition. He was still reading the books out loud. And so we can develop these chanting rounds and becoming attached to them. Not like just trying to yeah, I got that done, you know, just try to get through it. You know, actually attached to chanting the rounds, understanding what this is, that I'm actually having communion with Krishna, instead of placing, like with the Catholics, placing a wafer on your tongue, placing the lotus feet of the Lord on my tongue. by chanting Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
And these pastimes aren't like, there's a lot of things that we start to try to overanalyze them, and get into psychological analysis of it. But the fact is that if you read Prabhupada's purports, the point is what is the essence of this? What is it really about? And when I read that last sentence in the purport about Prahlad Maharaj, it dawned on me, that's what this is all about. This is all about, that he's a pure devotee. Parikshit Maharaj was a pure devotee from birth. He was an ideal emperor, an ideal king. He set an ideal example. And he forgave Kali. He protected all of his citizens. He had one circumstantial moment. But it was set up by the will of the Lord. And if it's the will of the Lord, then something wonderful is about to happen. Even though you may not see it now. Something fantastic. Because we know it's like, this is really nice, I want to stay here, this and that. But we're talking about, associating with this existence himself, the source of everything. Not maybe, by being the servant of the servant, the servant of the servant of the servant, somewhere back there in the crowd. I get to be in that. But even in Sureshwar and Leela Avatar will back me up on this. If you were in a crowd with Prabhupada, it didn't matter if you were right next to him, if you were way back, you felt that energy, and the energy of all the devotees. And actually, for myself, I never really felt qualified to push myself forward too much. The better, the further back. I remember Satyarup Maharaj, before Prabhupada came to Atlanta, he was giving us a class on the proper etiquette around the spiritual master. And he said, one should think himself a fool in front of the spiritual master. And the first thing that came to my mind is, I don't have to think I'm a fool. I know I'm a fool. And so, that a fool can always, doesn't expose himself until he opens his mouth. So I would just like to sit and listen and hear occasionally a few things. And then, we did this play, but anyway, just being, but we get the chance to associate with Prabhupada every single day. When you're reading Srila Prabhupada's books, he is ever present. I remember once, because there's a long story about how I was just dropped off at Atlanta. I was supposed to spend a night. And then the next morning he said, well, I need to stay for 2 more weeks until the festival in Notre Dame.
Who was this?
Huh?
Who said that to you?
Rupanuga.
Okay.
I was traveling, when I saw you,
Pittsburgh.
Yeah, so that later on, down the road, we had gone all the way down the East Coast, been to Atlanta, then we went down to Miami, and then we were working our way back up to pick up, he was going to meet Prabhupada in Pittsburgh, and he was going to be his secretary, and I'm serving him. So this is going to be great. So on the way up, literally this is the way it happened. He said, I was driving the van, Jagajivam was there, someone else said, should we stop at the temple in Atlanta or should we stop at that campsite in North Carolina? He goes, we'll stop at the temple. So we stopped at the temple for the night. The next morning he calls me in with John, Jagajivan, and says, Prabhu, I'm going to have, I knew I could hear it. Because it wasn't only just, being in the South, which I had issues with, but it was, I was on my way to have, association with Prabhupada. So, and then that just led to a whole, and so after a certain point, I'd been there for a couple of years, and Rupanuga was just coming back from India, You see those pictures of Rupanuga walking with Prabhupada at Mayapur when the Lotus building is still being constructed. So when he's coming back from, he came to Atlanta, and I picked him up at the airport. And on the way back, I said, "Well, I've been here now for 2 years. There's only 5 to it. Now we've grown a little bit, and I don't know who my spiritual master is. I have had that much direct association with him. I'd really like to go to India because I can see the devotees in India. Where in America, you get everybody's comes and you get lost in the crowd. But the devotees in India get a lot of personal association with Prabhupada. So I thought, can I go to India and get to know my spiritual master? Rupanuga said, do you read Prabhupada's books? I said, yes. He said, do you listen to his lectures? I said, yes. Do you hear his letters when they come in? I said, yes. Then you know Prabhupada. There's no difference. The personal association is not that important. And I remember thinking that everything that I had wished for by going, because I used to plot and plan to leave, and meanwhile I had the service of literally massaging the body of Govinda. And everything I had planned and plotted by going to India was accomplished by staying there. When Prabhupada came to Atlanta for those 2 or 3 days, everything that I had wanted to do happened better than what I could have accomplished if I had forced myself on Prabhupada. So by surrendering, anyway, we can associate with Prabhupada through our service and through his representatives, his disciples who are initiating, and the other disciples, and everyone is a follower of Prabhupada. As we've learned so nicely from Sureshwar's wonderful seminar. Hare Krishna.
Thank you.